Hello my brothers and sisters of the Order, welcome back to the Order. I'm Celtic Templar, and yes y'all, we're doing another weapons review and testing video, and that is on this bad boy. This is our Early Norman Mace. This is a, well, probably one of the coolest type of weapons, or single-handed weapons I ever had my hand on, other than my Warhammers. Well, I want to put this out here. This weapon I have right here is from Win the Steelcraft. This is the Early Norman Mace design. It's made out of solid cast steel for the head, and as such, its overall length is 20 5/8 of an inch. Its head is, I want to say, like 2.5 inches, and its shaft is like 18 inches. So pretty much this actually is a good length. And in such, its weight is around 1 pound. That is awesome. I want to put this out here. This thing is completely light. And as well, also, if any of y'all wonder how much this thing costs, it only costs like around $90 for these things. I've seen that Cult of Athena has run out recently. I don't know when they will have it back in stock, but for until then, I recommend a couple other groups which I will leave in links down below in the description. One of them being Medieval Collectibles and a couple of others. But yes, now I hear many people already asking, Templar, would this be a perfect home defense tool or weapon to defend myself and my home? Yes, it would be a lot more dangerous than a nightstick, and we will be doing tests on it very soon. Now many of you might wonder, Templar, how dangerous would this thing be into the human head? Well, take a look at that mace head. Would you want something like that hitting you? I most certainly would. Now, mace heads during the early periods had different designs. There were, I want to say, like, because we don't exactly know how many designs there were, since there were so many. So I can't exactly give you all a fair estimate or number, because one, it's not that easy, and two, we actually have not discovered that many type of mace heads. But originally, this was the type of design in mace what they would have normally looked like. It was just a wooden shaft with a metal head, or sometimes bronze, sometimes brass. The majority of the times, it was actually of casted steel, or in this case, casted metal. Not made out of steel, but mostly out of bronze or brass, mostly. So, Win the Steel kind of went a little further on and did this to it, so it's kind of a good thing. Now, I will also leave recommendations for other type of mace heads, especially for Todd's Workshop, who also sell these type of, well, designed shapes and heads. However, they're slightly a little more costly. So, if any of y'all want to risk that, be my guest, or as well I could just leave links for the mace heads themselves, and y'all can just make the shaft. Now, this one actually comes with the design on chain grip piece, or in this case the bottom piece for it to have a leather cord or something attached, which it does not come with a leather cord. I had to attach this myself, but it actually does really work. And as such, I do love this. Now, I was wanting to use this for my Norman Knight video like we had done in October. Problem is, it did not come until then, sadly, which I know I should have waited, but this was the Battle of Hastings anniversary, so you get my point. Now, I want to put this out here. The wooden shaft is incredibly awesome, and I love that. And entirely, this thing is dangerous. So, before anyone thinks that a late medieval mace is more better than a early medieval mace or any type of mace, you might want to take a look in history books, because these things were known to kill with an impact force. Shock trauma through the gambeson and through mail armor and into the body, especially even if you're wearing plate armor. And as such, the reason behind this is because most of the time what people don't understand is that maces back then were used on the battlefield a lot more than we did see swords. However, they somewhat faded out and then started to fade back in. This is actually the weird thing I find in history, because if you take a look at the Bronze and Copper Age, there were hundreds of thousands of these design of mace heads. And as well, even when we take a look into the, say, time of Rome, we actually hear of club-like weapons being used against them by the Germanic people. So that can be an example of a bludgeoning type weapon, which you gotta admit, would you want to get hit by something like this? This thing is actually more devastating than a sword. So I think I would want to go with this rather than go with a sword, especially if it comes to close quarters combat. Now this thing actually is incredibly light and effective. As you can see, with me and my movement, I am not feeling fatigued. I can easily move the weapon so fluently. It's nothing. I don't feel the problem. I am moving like I should. So that's saying something. Now, many people might also start asking, Templar, would you recommend on using a mace against somebody, especially if they're trying to hijack your car and you have this in your car? Yes, I would highly recommend this. Or if you're on your walk, for example, and you want to protect yourself, perfect tool. In fact, this type of weapon is perfect. And one devastating whack to the head or even to the shoulders and such, this could actually kill. So probably break a bone or two and call for police. Probably be the best option. So this thing is devastating of a weapon and has a beautiful design on a mace head, which I love. But maybe we should actually get into the helmet testing video, which we're going to be testing from 18 gauge to 16 gauge and then finally to 14 gauge steel. Which I want to put this out here. The steel quality in helmets evolved depending on the area. And such, we are kind of going a little far with this, but you gotta understand, when it came to weapons, maces were devastating, and we could pretty much see why this would later on be used multiply by everybody during the late periods, and we see an end of the sword entirely. So, maybe we should get to it. Alright, Al. Now, as I said, let's first start off on our 18 gauge steel helmet. Now, we got our mace here, which this is actually going to be what we might call a very good test to it, because one, we have to understand, we're first going to start with 18 gauge steel, then we're going to go to 16 gauge, then 14 gauge, and we're going to see the difference, because by the very late periods, plate armor, when it evolved, it started to make the weapon, such as a mace like this, somewhat a little obsolete unless you, depending on where the region you lived in. And the thing is, with the evolution of technology especially, we could see why. Now, it's even stated like the steppe people, like the Cumans, the Huns, the Mongols, would have used something like this, especially for their cavalry usage in warfare, as well as did the Byzantine Empire, and as well did the Seljuk Turks. Reason being was because the design in plate armor in that region was a little different. So mostly it would have been something near identical to an 18 gauge steel helmet, or as well somewhat near and identical to a 16 gauge steel plate armor. So let's see how it works and how well it will hold up. Now what we're going to do is the downward strike and as well the side strikes. So to each helmet to see how it does. Well, it did make a dent. What happened was, the impact of the weapon, because of the design on the head, it caused it to do a triangular type hit like that. Let's try a side hit, because I don't think this thing's going to do anything to our 14 or 16 gauge. Honestly, the only thing it's doing is massively making a mark in this helmet. Which, that's saying something. Maybe we should try a couple more. Whoa! We got something! I don't know if our head is surviving though. But I think it really did make a damage. But it's not doing much compared to our previous weapon test. And that's saying something. And I'm somewhat holding back, but it's not exactly doing much. Okay, here are our pot marks because of our mace. So far, that's all it's doing. It's doing the pot mark hits. So maybe we should ante up the armor and go to 16 gauge steel. Okay, now let's try the 16 gauge helmet. I don't know what might happen, so let's see, because from what happened to the 18 gauge steel, I don't know, maybe it was too compounded onto the type of piece of bar here, but I don't know, maybe because it's bigger it might cause a little more damage. But I'm thinking because the fact is it's riveted in instead of a full cast design steel, it might do something. Ooh! Ooh! 16 gauge is nothing! Let's try that again. Wow! Those hits left one hell of a mark in this helmet. It literally dented it inward because of the fact on how the design on the shape of the Norman head is. So Windlass do make really great weapons. I need to try a couple more. Okay, we're just pot marking this guy and he's just about to die. Okay, now let's try and get this better look here. As y'all can see, the impact is devastating with the fact of the pot mark design on the head. So, in fact, if it wasn't for the design on the head, this thing might actually have done nothing. But the thing is, Norman Mace heads had different designs, so it's different depending on where you are. So, yeah. Alright, now y'all, for our 14 gauge steel bassinet helm. This might actually do something. Maybe, maybe not, because this is technically the weaker design steel compared to our hardened Viking steel helmet, which maybe I should have actually brought it out because I don't know what's going to happen to our guy here. So, let's start seeing. Well, no force and power was so hard enough, it actually pushed it off. Maybe we should try that again. Okay. Let's try that again, shall we? Woo-hoo! It left several pot marks in this guy's helmet. So it does not matter if you're wearing a 14 gauge steel helmet. This thing is a devastating weapon. I mean, for self-defense, I think it would be perfect. Let's try that a couple more times. It's doing its damage. Because I can already tell you one thing, if a person was wearing this helmet, he'd probably have a little bit of ringing in his ears and probably have a fractured skull. And so far, this thing is still holding up. And it's done its damage to this guy. Alright, Did y'all like that? Now, I want to put this out here. The design and shape which we had done to our helmets, I want to put this out here. The steel quality craft on each one of them was sufficient enough to somewhat stop the head. But technically, seeing the fact that this is not a two-handed weapon I can use with two hands, which it is a two-handed, I can use two hands with it if I wanted, but I was mostly using my one hand. And that one hand devastatingly would have killed somebody even if they were wearing their helmet. And if none of y'all know, the force trauma behind a helmet, for example, if, for example, let me take my Crusader helmet right here. Because even though I be fully decked out in this helmet, there is one major drawback. As soon as this weapon comes in contact with my head, what happens is it's a force trauma going through the metal and into my skull, meaning it's gonna rattle my brain. In fact, we can even see this today with sports injuries, for example, and concussions and all like that. But this is devastating enough to the historical point. So, how dangerous would this be to our said medieval knight? Highly dangerous. So, would I recommend using it entirely for self-defense? As I said, yes. Would I recommend it for a cheap self-defense weapon? Yes. Better than Amazon. And I know you all know the area I live in, which we have a good community and all that, but I do sometimes see a lot of people actually still walking with some sort of club-like weapon. So, that's saying something. Now, I might pretty much hear people already saying, okay, Templar, you're saying you would use this to self-defend if you were walking. Yeah, because one, it looks on become this carrying a baton or a stick. Until, because as soon as this weapon hits you, you're just dead. Now, I don't know if this is historic, but I have heard heroic poems of knights managing to use a mace-like weapon and cleaving it through a helmet. Now, I think that might be stating that the helmet might have been riveted, I don't know, but I think it would be more likely that the helmet gave in due to the fact on where he had struck a weak point. But as we know from modern designs in history, most modern weaponry or today actually can stop certain weapons. And as such, that could be the same about early helmets, for example, during our history. But now, I would actually love to see this thing actually work with a buckler and shield combo. Because one, this thing could easily work. In fact, this thing is light enough to do the movement. I can easily just bash, 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 bash. It's just going to be a devastating killing field for the said opponent. So I don't know if this is going to end well for our opponents, but I do know one thing, it's not going to end well if it comes down to a guy who's technically walking home and he has one of these. And next thing you know, a gang somewhat comes up at him. Guess what? I can easily just use my mace as a type of defense posture, and as soon as he comes in with a stab, deflect to the side, then get to the head. See my point? This thing is rapidly fast. That's how light this thing is, and that is probably the perfect thing about it. Now, I was wanting to do a comparison with my late medieval mace, but I thought to myself, that might destroy the helmets entirely, because late medieval maces were a heavier design compared to this. And we can see why, because especially in some cultures, they had used design on helmets and weaponry. And in fact, even by the late medieval standpoint, even medieval foot soldiers would have mostly recommended a mace like this, rather than getting a fully metal mace. Reason being is one major reason, the cost. And the problem is, cost and metal back then was a lot more different than compared to today. So, in fact, it is cheap enough for y'all to buy. And I would highly recommend it for anybody who is actually looking for a really good design of mace. And as well, if you add in the buckler shield, that's just going to be a devastating combo. Especially if it comes down to it. But yeah, y'all, I would highly recommend this type of weapon entirely for any of y'all that are looking for historical style weapons and such. If any of y'all want to look at another new weapon in history that we should look at, please let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to get right to it. But as well, if any of y'all want one of these, I will leave links down below where you can get your hands on them, and also some other variations, so that way y'all can actually own one. And as well, hopefully we will be doing a how-to video on how to dress as a 14th century or maybe something else very soon, because technically it is getting colder, so that might help. But with this mace head, we might need to start doing a 12th century type knight very soon, because one, with this, I feel nostalgic to do so. But I want to put this out here. If I do so, this might actually be I might end up getting a little bit of too much of a comment in the community. But anyways, hopefully you like this video, like and subscribe for more, and as well, hopefully see y'all in the next one. Anyways, guys, hopefully you like and subscribe, and it's also check us out on Facebook, so that way y'all can stay tuned for more videos. Anyways, guys, it's been Templar. Have a great day.